Almost all of us have a habit of sitting in meditation, in a natural breath meditation before we practice. So I'd really like to settle into your default way of doing that in a way that you trust and is familiar. So very often this begins with awareness of the breathing. And very often as you settle in, the spine and the pelvic floor organize themselves into a really embodied posture, consciously embodied posture, so that your meditation is both breath aware and, in the subtlest sense, there's a kind of physicality, maybe even bandha, pelvic floor awareness in your meditation posture. Just check in and notice the degree to which that's already true for you. That meditation is breath awareness and posture awareness. You can go a long way into the clarification of consciousness with these elements. So without changing anything, notice behind your closed eyes, the actual gaze is pointed somewhere. If you were to open the eyes, the gaze would land somewhere outside of the body. So we're just making conscious the default position of the gaze in a closed eyes, seated meditation, which for many of us is not something we attend to. It's just happening in the background. So now we'll make it deliberate. This is big for Krishnamacharya and in a lot of the more esoteric yoga tradition, that you can gaze behind closed eyes when meditating in a way that changes your internal experience. So for him, you could have a practice where here, sitting, you are directing your internal gaze towards the heart center, for example. So just play with that for a moment. Nothing changes about your posture, but you're directing your eyes as if you could look at your heart. And what that does is move the consciousness of your sitting posture. Even if you couldn't create a direct vector between your gaze and your heart, it still shines your consciousness into that body area. And I just want to notice if this changes the quality of your concentration and of your inner experience. So now you're breathing, you're aware of the posture and the spine, but you also have a driste, which is to the center of your heart. And driste not only is literal, you're gazing your eyes there behind your closed lids, but your consciousness is concentrating on the heart. It's very different from meditating just with the breath and the spine. wonderful thing would be to stay here for 20 minutes. But we got asanas to do, so I want to talk a little bit. Now, unless it's too stimulating in some way, then disregard. See about changing this eye position only. Look up as if to the center of your eyebrows. So the eyes are still closed, but you're changing the gaze only, still doing breath and spinal awareness. But the gaze is to the center of the eyebrows. And again, notice if it changes the intentionality. Maybe the subtle subjective quality of the whole posture. Mm. Good. So in Krishnamacharya world, there are points of driste, both metaphorical and literal. That is to say, the concentration of the awareness and the actual physical gaze, all up and down the spine. So now, still with the eyes closed, come back to whatever you found last week for your Nasikrai drishti. So you might not be gazing hard down the tip of the nose. You may have the drishti landing out in front of your face a bit. Any distance, even as far away as the horizon, but very deliberately center your gaze in the field, either at the nose or out in front of the nose with the eyes closed. Wonderful. I will note that with that shift, the spines on my screen straightened up a bit. So there is a lot of research here for anyone if you want to do it. This is a huge field of practice. But I'll remind you what we discussed last week, which is my teacher's idea that the Nasikrai drishti is neutral. So we look towards the heart, we look towards the brow center, and now we're back in Nasikrai drishti, which is somewhere between the two. So the very last thing you learn in Trishtana is the gaze. See if you can just let that element of drishti drop for a minute and I'll talk. So you're still in a seated meditation with the breath awareness and the spine straight. And the student knows the formal drishti from the beginning, so we can approach it. But you really may practice a posture for years, sorting out the breath and the physicality, including the bandha of the posture, before it's appropriate to really integrate the drishti. So that's the first thing to know. If studying the drishti in any posture is TMI, drop it. You're fine, you're already practicing correctly. The second thing to know is as we go through today and make the default drishti a little more deliberate or conscious, if you ever need to put on the brakes, you go into your peripheral vision or look at the floor. So the human mind needs to space out sometimes. And drishti is the ultimate concentration practice. That's amazing. You get a super concentrated mind, you can do things in the world and be of service. And at the same time, too much concentration can be overwhelming. So always remember how to put on the brakes, either by looking at the floor, just to ground, or by taking a wide peripheral gaze. At any moment, you'll know your brain will do it for you. So don't resist that if you need to chill. Take samastitihi. And what I've seen this week is a lot of you are making some version of this broadly defined nasagra driste, your default, anytime you're in samastitihi. So you're really deliberately incorporating a gaze that's to the nose or to the horizon or somewhere in between. To the degree that your mind has the digestive capacity for it today, make every gaze deliberate. Even if you're doing it by default, actually with a soft landing and a soft origin at the back of your eyes, truly look at the nose, the thumb, the navel, whatever it is. And I don't mean that literally. I mean really grounding your consciousness at the point of the drishti as a way to concentrate the mind. Here we go.